Susan, thank you for talking with me. I'd like to start at the very beginning, which is where and when were you born?
Leominster, Massachusetts in 1963.
And what month? Because I'm interested in your astrological sign.
June 5th, 1963, 11:50 a.m.
That makes you a Gemini.
That's right.
And like me, I'm June 12th. Do you feel like someone who has multiple interests, likes to communicate, have their fingers in a lot of pots, sometimes can be scattered? Any of that apply to you?
Not the scattered part, but I
Yeah.
have a lot of interests. I'm very good at all of them.
What
So,
what what was there about your family growing up that gave you that kind of confidence and ability?
my mother would say to me every day, "Susan, you're the BEST, 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 best." And my grandparents adored me, and I always did well in school. And I don't know. My mother always said the last thing she said to me before I went out the door, on my way to school is have fun, and I would. so
Do you have
so
siblings?
I have one sister. She's 8 years younger than I am. Her name is Anne, and she comes to all these. She's part of our Dowsing chapter, and she's always comes to the Dowsing conferences that we have.
And is she a professional in the science field like you?
No, she's has her MBA, and she also has she's a high school guidance counselor, and she works for the federal government.
Ah, interesting.
Um,
So, after high school, where did you go?
I went to Fitchburg State College. I studied industrial engineering. I had my grandparents lived very close by, my father's parents, and my uncle Bernard always lived with my grandparents. He had he drove motorcycles, he fixed lawnmowers and chainsaws and things like that, and so I'd go over there a lot, and I would hang out with him, and I'd learn how to repair lawnmowers, um, 2 and 4 stroke engines, chainsaws, motorcycles, etc. And then and he also worked for Raytheon, so he taught me all about electronics and circuitry. So when I was in college, I leaned towards engineering, and then graduated. And one of my first jobs, although it was my first job, I worked for a company called Avco Systems Textron, where we manufactured the reentry vehicle for the MX missile. And from there, I went to work at MIT Lincoln Laboratory, where I did aluminum gallium arsenide semiconductor laser array diode research. And then I went to the Charles Stark Draper Lab, which is also part of MIT, and did non-inertial guidance system research on accelerometers.
And when you were studying engineering in college, and when you were working at places like MIT, what percentage of the engineers were women?
Oh boy, I was the only in my bachelor's degree. I was the only woman in my graduating class, and that was 1986. I stayed an extra year to study robotics. So
And then what about on the job?
um, there were very few women. There
And
was only a few of us. Yeah.
and did was that an issue or not?
Um, no, well, I never cared. I mean, I never cared who was working around me. Um, it was, I made friends, and so it didn't really matter. Growing up, I had friends that were boys and girls, and so it was never really an issue to me whether there were more men than women. But as time's gone on, thankfully, it's more women are going into engineering, so I'm glad to see that.
So, were there any other factors besides your uncle? But you didn't start learning from him until you were in college?
No, I grew up. My grandparents lived like a mile and a half from me. So we would go to we'd go to church either Saturday night or Saturday afternoon, and then go over to my grandparents' house right over the hill. I spent a lot of time. I spent a lot of time with my grandparents. So that was growing up, and knew how to handle tools, and so that was always part of my life.
Uh huh. And I am assuming you were good in math and science in high school.
Yeah, yeah, yes.
Right.
In
And
college too. Yeah.
you went to church on Saturday because they were Seventh-day Adventists?
Catholics. My father was a firefighter, so we, I went to Catholic school. So had nuns and priests in my family. Cloistered nuns. You know what a cloistered nun is?
Yeah, they're in a convent.
They're in a convent, and all they do is pray, and they're not allowed to touch anybody or be near people, etc. So anyhow, we would go to mass on Saturday night or Saturday afternoon or Sunday morning, depending on what my father's schedule was, because it was my father that was Catholic and not my mother. Which going to Catholic school, that didn't, they would tell us you could only date Catholics and you had to marry a Catholic, and then when I raised my hand and said otherwise, I'd get in trouble. So,
did you hear in Catholic school you should be Mary-like, that you should be pure and virginal and be like Mary?
Oh, probably. I suppose they did say things like that, but I just never really paid a lot of attention to those sort of things. I just tried to be a good person.
And you haven't talked much about your dad. Was he supportive in the same way as your mom, or?
Oh yeah, both my parents were members of my chapter. Sure. Yeah. Oh yeah. I have a really cool picture of him if you look on the FlagstaffDowsers.com website that shows all the pictures from past dowsing conferences. There's a picture of him leaning over, and he's dowsing with one of Raymond Grace's bullet pendulums. So.
Before we leave engineering and the sciences, people are really concerned about robots and AI, those kind of technologies replacing a third to half of the jobs in the near future. What are you projecting in terms of the effect of those kind of technologies on employment and the kind of jobs that are available?
Well, considering I graduated from college over 1986, so over 30 years ago, that was something that was starting to be put into place at that point with in the car industry, in the manufacturing industry. And robots can certainly do jobs that are far too dangerous for humans to do. Like they'll drive right into, if there's a bomb, they'll have the little tractor tread and drive right up and then disassemble a bomb, defuse a bomb. Do you want to do that?
No. Absolutely not.
Well, so as a technologist, I look upon the jobs that robots are replacing are for the safety and health of the human race. So, where are they taking the jobs away?
Secretaries, travel agents, greeters at airports, any kind of job that is fairly routine, I would say.
Well, I suppose, going to McDonald's, then poking on the screen what you want to have to eat instead of talking to a person. I suppose that's a type of robotics. But as for the robotics that I studied, like CNC, computer numerically controlled, we would write a program and then make chess pieces out of them. Or the other robots that were kind of like an R2-D2. Those are the ones that are being used in fire and safety and the police force, so that so nobody gets no human is harmed.
Okay. Then your other Gemini part is the dowser, which would some people consider woo-woo, as opposed to engineering, which is based on science and laboratory proven replication of results and that kind of thing. So how did you get interested in dowsing, and how did the two fit in your brain?
When I was 6 years old, my mother's mother passed away, and she came to me and she said, take care of your mother. And I said, okay. And, as a voice. And so when my mother came into the living room where I was sitting, said, Grammy Lane Sandy died. And I said, I know, she just told me.
Oh.
So growing up here in Massachusetts, we lived near Salem, Massachusetts. I live about I don't know, 40 minutes from Salem, Massachusetts. So we'd go on little, field trips with school, or would go. My parents would always take us all to all the different science museums and lots of different places. So we'd go to Salem, and we'd go and get our palm read. We'd get our handwriting analyzed. We would go to have our fortune told, or my mother gave me, these. It was an orange and black package, and it was like they were called witch cards or something, and they were basically kind of a real deck of cards, but they were also fortune telling cards. So, she'd buy me things like that, and when I was 12, she bought me a Ouija board. In our neighborhood growing up, we played with Ouija boards a lot on rainy days. So unlike some people I know, I didn't have parents who were telling me that these things were bad. Also, when my mother was pregnant with me, there was a UFO over the house. It was a huge sighting in Leominster, Massachusetts, and
Wow.
and she we lived near a church and a doctor's office across the street, and it went zip, zip, zip over all three buildings. Many people saw it in town, and she said it looked like a cigar, and it had windows that were lit up, and it was got pretty close to her, and so she always would encourage me to watch shows like In Search of with Leonard Nimoy, and she'd buy me books like the one that Reader's Digest had called Strange Stories, Amazing Facts, that talked about UFOs and Bigfoot and reincarnation and all sorts of things that aren't in the norm, the regular things that you'd read in school. So I was always very well-rounded in my studies. So, and then I knew I would see tests when I would, the state you're in when you're waking up in the morning. I would see the test. I would see the questions to the test. And I would think that was really strange. And then as time went on, then I would go take the test. It was like, oh my gosh, I was seeing those questions when I was waking up.
When did that start? How old were you roughly?
I don't know, like 10. When tests really started to mean something in school. And then that continued on through college. When I took my GRE, my graduate register exam, that's when you take, when you take your SAT for your bachelor's degree, and then you take your GRE or your GMAT for your master's degree. I dowsed my entire GRE exam. I did not read one question. I had to take it on a computer, and I had to go from Cambridge to Worcester to take it because it was all very limited time periods as to when these tests were being offered. So I took the test. I said, well, I have a pendulum in my pocket, but I can't use it because I had cameras on me. So I would look at the questions. I wouldn't look at the questions. I would look at A, B, C, D, or A, B, C, D, E, and the letters. I would fuzzy my vision. Whatever was the brightest one, that would be my answer. And I graduated from Worcester Polytechnic Institute in May of 2000. I worked on my master's degree from January of 1998 to December of 1999. I'm a very driven person, and I achieved my goals.
What was your score on that GRE that you didn't read the questions?
I don't know. I guess I'd have to go look it up, but it was adequate, and it was good enough for Worcester Polytechnic Institute, which they have very high standards. So I just never they accepted me. It just really mattered. So.
And then what about dowsing? And for people who don't know, what different abilities does dowsing refer to?
Dowsing is focused intuition. And if you've ever, seen the old man farmers with a Y-shaped stick, and this is a Y rod because it's shaped like the letter Y. And then they're walking along, and then they're trying to find a place to drill a well, and I'll think, okay, is there water below me? And then the rod will just go down. I'm not making this go; it's going down automatically. So the farmers will do that. Horses are dowsers. Horses find water. Horses and any other animal when they need to have a drink. So you can use dowsing for finding missing people, missing pets, missing items. for the stock market, for you go into a store that has scratch tickets, the lottery tickets, and then if one catches your eye, and then you buy it and you win, or at least that's what I do. So some people get all wrapped up in, oh, you can't use dowsing for money stuff. It's like, well, if that's what you want to believe and that's what you want to work with, that's your issue. It's a skill just like any other skill, and you should be properly compensated for it if you're helping people. So
Yeah. How often do you buy those kind of lottery tickets, and what percentage of the time do you win?
I don't go I don't go into those type of stores very often, and I always win because I'll buy the more expensive tickets too, like the $20 tickets. But if I've $100, then I take that $100 that I win, and then I kind of take another look at things and win another couple $100, and after a while I just get bored and then go home.
So you look at the ticket that kind of pops out at you?
Yeah, things like when I took the exams, whatever is brighter. Sometimes there'll be you can kind of, I'm not necessarily purposely fuzzying my vision, but you go into like a gas station. Around here in Massachusetts, we have gas stations that'll have lottery tickets, or the liquor stores will have lottery tickets, and they'll have a whole wall of them. And if one catches my eye, then I say I'll buy that one, and that'll be that.
Cool.
I just do it for fun. You see, when for that, that's for fun. Whereas when you're learning to douse is one thing, but some people use it as a parlor trick, and that's not what it is. I douse because there's a need.
And it seems like the biggest need recently is for water. Is that a true statement?
Yeah.
And
it
what do you use to douse for water besides the Y stick?
The Y rod. Well, the thing is that I don't need any of the tools. I can look at a map. I can just know exactly, just drill here, you'll get 18 gallons a minute, you'll have to drill 197 feet. I'll just know that. And I've doused wells all over New England. New England consists of Maine, New Hampshire, Vermont, Massachusetts, Rhode Island, and Connecticut. And just a couple weeks ago, I was up in upper New York State, Vermont, dowsing wells. I just had a phone call right before we started here from a woman up in Gloucester, Massachusetts, up on the North Shore, north of Boston. She has 27 acres, and she wants to build 7 houses. So I'll have to find her. But when you're dowsing, you also have to understand about the parameters. You have to know how far you have to be from the road, from property lines, from wetlands, from your septic systems, from structures, a barn or a home. So there's a lot more to it than just saying, hey, I want to drill a well right here.
So you don't really need to go to the property. You can just have a plot map of the site and just intuit, this is the spot that draws me.
I could. However, what I like to do, I make my own L rods, I make my own Y rods, I make all my own dowsing tools, and then I go to the place, and then I teach the people how to douse, and then give them the tools, and then generally they'll find they'll find the spot ahead. I'll have it ahead of time, knowing where the sites are, and I'll say, "What the hell did you call me for? You picked it out yourself." but it's all about just trying to help people to find what they need, because you want to ask for potable water, drinkable water that tastes good, that smells good, that's there year round, that's an appropriate depth, appropriate gallons per minute, easy for the well driller to get to, beneficial to all who drink it, and is primary water. Primary water is the water that's deep in the earth. It's not groundwater, which is about 20. It can be up to 20 feet down, where you may get fertilizer, you may get gas or oil spills or something like that. Here in New England, where I was born in Leominster, Massachusetts, where plastic was invented and Johnny Appleseed was born. So we have a lot of apple orchards, and then they end up becoming places where homes are built. The developers buy the property. However, the important thing is that when do you know how they used to fertilize apple orchards?
With
what they used?
manure?
Arsenic.
Arsenic.
They used to use arsenic to for fertilizer for mostly for for insecticides, and so that arsenic is deep in the earth. So when I've done wells that are on such properties, I tell them, I said, you have to go at least 400 feet down, because you want to make sure that you're not getting any of the water, and then I say you must test it ahead of time, which they do. So.
And how did you first learn about the tools, the rods and the pendulum and all that?
Well, when I was on vacation in Stonehenge, I was with a friend of mine, and then there was a bus tour, and the bus tour people were they were walking. There's a path that goes between the circle of stones and the heel stone. There's a point, kind of a semi-pointy stone that's on the other side of the path. So they'd walk, and then when they got to between the big circle of stones and the heel stone, their rods would then spin like helicopter blades. And I'm pretending I'm at Stonehenge right now, and that spot where I first discovered dowsing. So I talked to them. They said they had no idea what they were doing. They said, go talk to the bus driver. The bus driver had no idea what they were doing. So then I went back to work at MIT Lincoln Laboratory and told some of my engineer friends. And they said, go talk to Harold Anderson. So Harold taught me how to measure. Around our bodies, we have bubbles of energy. So you have your physical, emotional, mental, and spiritual body energies around our body. So he taught me how to do that. And then on my own, I learned how to find missing things. I had moved from one apartment to another, and I had put my mink earmuffs away. And then when I moved to the new apartment, I was saying, where did they go? Where did they go? So I said, I wonder if my rods can show me where they are. So I went. At the time, I went from room to room, and so when I went to the back bedroom, I got no, because my yes opens up. That's my yes, and my no makes an X. So I went through each room. Then when I was walking from the kitchen to the dining room, my rods immediately swung to the left, and right there was my hope chest. And hope chests are, the innards of a hope chest is cedar wood, and that keeps the moths from eating all of your wool sweaters and your furs and things like that. So that's where I learned. That's what I taught myself. I can find missing items too. So
what else have you found besides your earmuffs? I mean, have you found missing people or?
Yes. I have friends that are reporters, and they'll come to me, and they'll tell me about things that are going on, and then I will see. I'll see what it is, because what happens is I see where the person is, if they've been murdered and then dumped in the woods or something. I never go on my own, because if you do, you're a suspect. So back in the mid-'90s, when I was working in Cambridge for Draper Laboratory, I would go across the street and get coffee once in a while, and there was this pristine office building, and it was always clean and beautiful. And one day there was a piece of 8.5 by 11 piece of paper. I said, "Oh, that's weird." And then something said, "I need to read that." And then at the top, I was seeing that said "missing." I saw it was a picture of a little person, and I got closer and closer, and it was a little boy, and he was missing. His name was Jeffrey Curley, and I got sick to my stomach. And as I was reading it, I could smell gasoline. And now there was nothing around. There was no lawns. There was no reason for me to smell gasoline. Well, it turns out that he had been abducted by these two men, and they had befriended him and bought him a bicycle, and his parents were working all the time, so they didn't have a lot of time to pay attention to him. So they befriended him. Then they picked him up and then, took him off to up to Maine. They gagged him with a gasoline-soaked rag, and then they put him into a big Tupperware container and filled it with cement, wrapped it up with duct tape, and threw it over a bridge. Now, I smelled that, because I'll relive how somebody dies when these things happen. That's why I don't bother watching the news before I go to sleep at night, because if they show someone they're missing, I'll know immediately if they're dead or alive, and then relive their deaths. So I found people's, missing hearing aids and passports and rings. WGBH Channel 2 that produces the show Nova. They called me in quite a number of years ago, and they had 37 missing videotapes. And they have warehouses two warehouses at a time the size of football fields. They're huge. Several, many, many stories high. And so I dowsed which building it was in. And then they told me what was on. I said, what's on the tapes? And they told me, so I kept finding what they were telling me. And then I finally said to them, do you have one tape of that series? And that's what's called a witness. If it's like, say you have two earrings, you lost one earring, the other earring is a witness. So that's the same thing. It's the energy of it. So, so I put it under my armpit, and I just kind of walked from, down the rows, and then finally I get down to a dead end, and my rods went to the right. So I took my rods and I took them down to the ground, and then slowly they came up. So they came up, and then they went to the right, and then there were several layers of boxes, and several deep. And then I stuck my arms in my rods, and they crossed, made an X, opened it up, and there were the tapes in a mislabeled box. And they had hired people all through the prior summer to try to find them, and they couldn't find them. And even then, the director still didn't believe in dowsing. I said, I don't care. I don't care what you believe. I did it. The woman who had called, knew to contact me, lived up in the Northeast Kingdom and knew Northeast Kingdom of Vermont, and was aware and knew what dowsers were. So she found me.
If I told you about a missing necklace that I have, if I described it, would it be fun to douse for it?
No. Because you're saying it's going to be fun to douse for it. I don't know what it looks like, unless you had a picture of it.
I can describe it in words.
Well, first of all, so how many years ago did you lose it?
Like 4.
So it was in your house?
I don't know.
So I can sit here and say, is it in Gail's house? Yes or no? I'm getting a yes on that. So it's in your house. And then we just ask, what floor is it on?
There's only one floor.
Okay. And then you just go from room to room and then just douse yes or no. Is it in this room or that room? And one of the issues I have in working with people that tell me they have a lost item, I had a woman contact me. She lost a 6-carat diamond ring. And I went to her house, and my rods immediately went towards the kitchen. And she says, no, it's in my bedroom. We tore her bedroom apart. I said, I'm still getting the kitchen. So, no, it can't be in the kitchen. It can't be in the kitchen. Her kitchen was pristine. There was like nothing on the counters. But above the sink on the shelf was this little French ceramic shoe. Okay? And my rods kept pointing to that. And then I left, and she paid me, and I left, and she never, I didn't find it, but my rods kept saying there. And I said, I keep getting that. Well, it turns out that's where she would put her ring every time she washed her hands or did the dishes. She'd put it in that friggin' shoe. Okay? So that's where I will tell people that there'll be an item in a certain place, and they'll say, oh, no, that's ridiculous. And so I just kind of, I can't be bothered.
Yeah. So there's an organization of dowsers. Is it a national organization? Is there more than one? What happens at the conferences? What's happening in Arizona in October?
I am personally funding the conference in Arizona in Flagstaff. I'm the director of that conference. I'm also the director of the West Coast Dowsers Conference. And people kept asking me, when are we going back to Flagstaff, Susan? When are we going back to Flagstaff? Carolyn and Ed Stillman used to run the conference in Flagstaff. They were the president and vice president of the Sedona chapter. And they retired from doing it in 2013, and then unfortunately Ed passed away in December of last year, right before Christmas. So we have our California conference. We have it at the University of California, Santa Cruz, and it's one of the top 10 most beautiful campuses in the world.
Yeah, it's beautiful.
And and then where we're having our conference in Flagstaff is at the Little America Hotel, and that's where that conference has been held over the years. It used to be called the Southwest Dowsers Conference by the other group of people who ran it, and then so we've just decided to call it the Flagstaff Dowsers Conference.
And what kind of workshops and topics are available for if people wanted to go?
Everything. The conference starts on the 6th of October on the Wednesday before, and then the Tuesday after we have a private tour of vortexes in Sedona. The company will pick us up at the hotel, bring us to the private areas, teach us how to douse the vortex energies, and then bring us back to the hotel. Thursday, the beginner school is the beginner school. There's also advanced dowsing schools. Richard Feather Anderson is teaching his geomancy classes and how to tell what the front door of a tree is, for example. When you go to buy bushes and trees at a nursery, you want to ask them that they want to come home with you. That's one of the basic things that he'll do.
Wait, a front door of a tree? Well, I don't know what that is.
Well, you haven't taken his class, that's why.
Right. What does it mean?
Well, so a tree will have a front door. There's like you sit there and you douse because that's and then you'll want to, because a tree will want to be planted in a certain direction.
Oh.
Okay. Have you ever planted a bunch of? I forget my father planting a bunch of bushes along this wall that we had. It was the wall, it was on the edge of the wall, and that went down. So it had plenty of wind and rain and whatever, and all of them died. And looking back on that is because it was also right underneath the cable wire and the electricity wire coming into the house. I think that was the electromagnetic forces that were not being very helpful to those bushes. Let's see, Dr. Adi Two Owls will be teaching how to open the third eye. That's an interesting class because when the Catholic Church baptizes you, or when you're baptized, they'll make sigils on your forehead.
What's a sigil?
It's a symbol, like a cross or whatever. Okay, it's S-I-G-I-L. And so what happens is that it blocks the third eye. It blocks your ability for your intuition. So that class that she'll be teaching will be teaching you how to undo that.
Wow, I didn't know that. That's profound.
Yeah. And
do you think that's true for Protestants who go through baptism and confirmation?
Well, I'm sure that the churches have always tried to have power and control over the masses. The Catholic Church used to believe in reincarnation, and then people said, "Oh, I can be bad in this life because then my next life I'll be good." So then the Catholic Church says, no soup for you, no more reincarnation for you. You have to be good in this life, and so we can control how you act. There's Marty Kane will be teaching a class on how to make labyrinths, and she'll be building a labyrinth outside behind the hotel on the property. They're clearing the property for us. And then Tina Bergen is teaching a class on palmistry. It's not telling the future, but it kind of just like your like it's astrology. When you're in your astrological, that's your fingerprint, the time you were born, where the planets were in relation to where and when you were born. So that's something that she's very good at. So then we have Friday, Saturday, Sunday. We have 4 classes at the same time, 4 classes to choose from at 9 a.m., 10:45, 2 hours for lunch, and then 2 o'clock and then 3:45. There'll be 4 classes. It's a 4-track conference, and that's Friday, Saturday, and Sunday. And then Monday there'll be workshops with Alan Handelsman. They'll be teaching romance, finance, and something else that's about relationships and money. And Margaret Van Leer Martin will be teaching a class, How to Get Rid of Your Bad Habits. And it's an excellent class. It's very, very good. Roxanne Louise will be teaching a workshop. And I think that is about it for right this moment. We may be adding more workshops as time goes on, but we have speakers who will talk about, our inner dimensions. Tom Dongo will be there teaching about UFOs. Paul Eno's coming out from Rhode Island. He'll be talking about beyond the paranormal. He's been studying paranormal for the past 50 plus years. We'll be teaching map dowsing, treasure dowsing, gold dowsing, water dowsing, deviceless dowsing. Each of these things are their own. We have the beginner dowsing on the Thursday, but then there's other classes that are much more focused upon these other skill sets that there are out there. So yeah, it'll be a very, very, very interesting and very well attended event.
How many people do you anticipate will come?
Probably about over 300 people will probably be there. Dowsers. Mm-hmm. We're doing extensive advertising. This is our logo. So,
what does the logo say?
It says Flagstaff Dowsers Conference. Joan Champion, who was a dowser from Philo, California. Her husband Alex Champion makes our labyrinths out when we have it in Santa Cruz. He'll create a design, then he'll draw it out in chalk, and my sister and my husband help him to paint it, draw it out with chalk, and they're quite fascinating. So Joan passed away in 2008, and this is one of her paintings, and then Land's End has made it into a lovely embroidered logo.
Neat. So. Could you demonstrate the use of some of the various dowsing tools so people can see how they work? I know you feel they're not imperative, but they can be useful.
This is a pendulum. This is a Joe Smith dancing pendulum. Okay, Joe Smith was a dowser from Johnson, Nebraska. He passed away in 2010. So this is. I'll just ask. Show me yes. And show me no. So that's my yes and my no. And I will also use, this is an L rod because it's shaped like the letter L. I made this out of copper tubing, and this is brazing material for welding. And so I can say with one rod, I can say show me yes. And it will go clockwise. I can say, show me no, and it will go counterclockwise.
Let's ask it this, just for fun. Is Trump going to run for president in 2024?
So you always say for fun, okay, when you ask these questions. Now, either you're serious about this or you're not. And I do not douse the future, okay? I douse the now. Douse the now because things can change in the court. A plane could crash in a minute right over my head. You don't know what's going to happen in 2024. So you can ask, as of right now, will Donald J. Trump run for president? Okay, and I'm getting a yes. But that's as of right now. But there's a lot of things that can happen that can make that answer be a no. And so, but then there's other questions that you need to also formulating your questions in dowsing is the primary and most important thing to do. Trusting your gut is the most important thing to do. Okay. So then we also have our Y rods over here. I make these out of polypropylene, and then this is this part here is Tygon tubing. And then I just use a hot glue gun and then insert the hot glue in that. I haven't cleaned these up yet. I have to take a razor blade and cut that off. You can make it smooth. So you're holding the rod, and then you say, I'll pretend that I'm walking across my lawn right now, and then find me the best place to drill a well. And then the rod will just snap right down, right underneath. And let's see, I got bobbers here too. And then we have what are called bobbers. The bobber has a handle to it, and then some of them will have a spring, and then it'll have something on the end. I had made one myself. I was just making them with no. I was making some with no coil, and then I was just finding some different beads. So you can sit here and say, "Show me yes," and then "Show me no." Showing no, and then I could be asking it, where's my wellhead here in my property? And I'm gonna keep twisting, and then as I stop, and then as I'm twisting around this way, you'll see how it's spinning. Can you see the end spinning around? Okay, because my wellhead's over in that direction on the property. So it depends on the questions that you're asking but you want to say ahead of time. You always want to be asking what's your yes and what's your no questions.
And do you think it's important to test in the clear to make sure you're a clear channel and not so your energy field isn't scrambled?
Well, I always I always say to myself, I center myself, body, mind, and soul. My higher, I come into harmony with my own disharmony. My dowsing mentor is Joe Whippich, or Joachim Whippich, and he's an 88-year-old German engineer. So there's actually quite a few engineers that are dowsers in our community.
And it seems like all of this kind of interesting metaphysical searching, it's mostly older people. If you look at who is tuning in to Ion's webinars or the British ones or to Dowsing, it's older people. Like, what do you agree with that? And what needs to be done to reach out to younger people?
Well, I started when I was 27. That's when I first discovered dowsing at America's Stonehenge. And then I came into contact with the Boston Dowsers, and I've been the president of them since 2002. So what happens is there are some parents, unless the parents are involved or they understand what dowsing entails, they may be fearful of dowsing. We, at our conferences, always teach a youth program. We'll be teaching a youth program in Flagstaff, and so we're almost up to our capacity for the children that will be in that. They have to be school age, and they have to be well behaved, and their parents need to attend the conference and be right there in case anything happens. So we're doing our best to reach out to schools and to say 4-H programs and let the parents know that we're out here and we're trying to teach the kids. And I know that Jeanette and Barney from the NorCal Dowsers, that they have gone to fairs, and they've the fairs that are more of a 4-H focus. And they've taught the kids, they've taught like 200 kids in the course of like a couple hours how to douse. They'll give them a pair of L rods and they'll just say, this is how you do it. And then the kids try it for a couple of times and then they go on to the next child. So at least the kids can say, hey, I tried this.
Neat. And do you have your own kids, may I ask?
No, I was an egg donor. There are 66 of me out there in this world.
Wow, that is interesting.
Yeah.
So how do those offspring know not to marry their half-sibling?
I don't know. It's all through these, the in vitro fertilization clinics, and I did donations 4 times over when I was about 30 years old, and back then they didn't. There were certain IVF clinics that wanted your photo and others that did not, and I cannot go looking for these children. But if there was one thing I would want them to know is that they came from a dowser, because I'm a 4th-generation dowser, and then that would make them a 5th-generation dowser. In addition to my cousin David's son Arthur, who is I've been teaching him how to dowse, and he's very, very good at it. So he's 9 years old now. And
were those dowsers on your mother's side?
Yes.
So your mom has those kind of gifts as well?
Yeah, and her father, and then my great-grandfather Nunzio, who came over from Italy. Yeah.
So they literally were dowsers, like dowsing for water
Yeah.
or whatever. Ah, so you had that as part of your.
Well, I didn't know it until I was, I started doing it myself. I was never told I was a dowser. I was never told about this. It just kind of happened organically. Like my mother always told me, "Oh, you're named after my best friend in high school, Susan." And then when I was in high school, I became friends with this boy Bill, and it turns out that his aunt was Susan.
Oh.
And we were never in, we never knew about each other. We're still very good friends to this day, but the fact that, that things kind of synergistically come together and happen the way they're supposed to, I suppose.
Right.
Just
another interest of yours as a Gemini with many of them is radio. What's your involvement with local radio?
Oh, it's television. I'm
Television.
vice president of our I'm the vice president of our local board of directors of our local television station. So, I've had television shows over the years. I had one during the early to mid '90s called Susan Science Center, where I did live kitchen chemistry experiments and with Bill, with that same person, Bill, and he was my gravity gorilla. So he was like kind of a pest and would help me with experiments and things. And then I took over a UFO conference in Leominster, Massachusetts back in 2015. And then to help to market it and advertise it, we did a TV show called Out of This World with Susan and Willie. And Willie was my friend that we worked together on the conference and would interview all the speakers and other people that were ufologists and interested in the phenomenon. And I did that through the TV station, and then the TV station would help me to videotape when we had the conferences. So
super. What do you make of the recent report from the federal government saying maybe there's UFOs? We don't really know. Is that kind of the gist of the recent report?
I have friends that are part of MUFON, the Mutual UFO Network, and they just said that a lot of the studies and a lot of the reports that are out are just kind of a bunch of baloney. However, I have to think that my opinion is that we can't possibly be the only form of intelligent life in the universe. So there has to be something out there.
And what evidence do you have besides the fact that your mother saw a UFO right before you were born?
That so many people that I know as credible have had experiences. They're not armed flailers. They're not out there looking for attention. They're not out there trying to make a lot of money. They just will talk about their experiences and what happened when they were younger and how these different experiences happened, either many times over the years or that they just had what I felt were credible stories.
Mm-hmm. Do you remember the name of there was a Harvard researcher who...
Dr. Mack.
What was his last name?
Mack. That was Dr. Mack was his last. John Mack.
That's right. And he would interview and kind of help guide people who were disturbed by their UFO experiences.
Yeah, there was a place called Insight. It was like a building, and they had all kinds of paranormal-ish and interesting classes in Cambridge, Massachusetts, and I was fortunate enough to be able to meet him back in the early 90s before he passed away. Yeah.
I think he got a lot of flack from that. I mean, he had to have a lot of courage to do that kind of work.
Yeah, that's right. And he was hit by a car I believe in London when he passed away.
Whoa.
And they feel that was an accident. They feel that was kind of that it wasn't exactly an accident. So
what I don't understand is it seems like most of the reports are painful. I mean, they're being experimented on or building some kind of hybrid species or something, and they're the Greys who are not capable of love. So most of those kind of reports seem negative. So what does that say?
Well, but then there are dowsers that were followers of Urantia, and those were the aliens that were blonde haired, and blonde haired, and they were more kind and loving. So, and there are people that did have, there are people that have had good positive experiences. Others, or they were healed, like Travis Walton, and he's spoken at our conference here in Leominster. Has stayed here in our home for quite some time, and he's never been sick a day in his life since he was abducted in the 70s.
And who does he think healed him? Which species, if you want to call it?
Well, he wasn't. If you watch the movie Fire in the Sky, that was a rather scary movie when they were showing the different aliens, and then he was kind of in like a sack, like when like an animal is born. He was in one of those, but he doesn't really talk about that part of his experience. But I'm not sure. According to the movie, they were the ones that looked like the Greys.
But they healed him.
Well, they didn't heal him. He's never been sick since he had that experience, because he was missing for about a week, and the police thought that he was out. He was a lumberjack, and he was out with his brother and his colleagues, and then there was a bright light in the sky, and then they said, "Don't go near it," and then he did, and then it kind of zapped him, and then it just kind of pulled him out into the craft.
Some people say, "Oh, the Pleiadians are helping us, and they really know how to love, and that we should call on them." So, the Pleiadians, people like that.
I'm not. The people I've had that have spoken at my UFO conferences are scientists and astrologers, and I don't recall anyone ever talking about the Pleiadians and the conferences I've run. So,
anything else that you'd like people to know about human abilities, potentials that maybe we don't really understand or realize?
Well, the thing is that we all have gut feelings. And, you have like the hair stand up on the back of your neck or your arms, or you get a feeling in your gut, gut feelings as they're called. I strongly encourage anyone, especially when I'm teaching them how to dowse, always trust your gut, because it will save your life. Someday you're driving home and you say, "I'm going to get off at exit 5 instead of exit 6. And you don't, why is this voice telling me to do this? And then you do it, and then you find out there was a huge accident that you avoided. Or something tells you here, just, go home this other way, or stop, or just like stop, wait a minute. And that can be saving you from, instead of being in a hurry all the time, pay attention to what's going on around you. Maybe because you think, "Oh, this is going to make me late." It may not necessarily make you late to an appointment. It may be that you have avoided an accident, or maybe it'll give you the chance to get a phone call that say, "You don't have to go to this place anyways, because the doctor was called away to an emergency room, and so you don't have to go after all." Pay attention to, I feel that there are no coincidences. That, you'll see synchronicity happen, and, if you just kind of pay attention to that, and who you meet and why you meet them, and the lessons that they teach us are, you might think this is a terrible lesson. Well, it's something that, this is because it's a lot less horrible than some other thing that you may have to learn or know or figure out over the years. And if sometimes you're interviewing for jobs and you'll say, "Oh darn, I didn't get this job, and what the heck," you'll sit there and say that was unfortunate. Well, not when the FBI raids the same company 2 weeks later for selling secrets to another country. Then you sit there and say, "Well, thank goodness I dodged a bullet." So
it sounds like you believe in karma and reincarnation. Is that fair?
Well, I believe in reincarnation, and now as for karma, it's like, if I just try to be a good person, and If people want to be a jerk to me or something, that's their problem, and I feel sorry for them. And because they would say, why are they being this way, and what's going on? A lot of times it's just jealousy, which is unfortunate. But I feel that my purpose here is to do all I can to spread dowsing and to help people to learn to dowse and use their dowsing and use their innate dowsing abilities, because we all have this ability. We all have intuition. We all have a gut feeling. And whether or not some people are better with a pendulum than they are with an L rod, you don't need a tool. Your body is a tool. There'll be times when there's what's called deviceless dowsing, and you can take your pointer finger and rub it on your thumb plate, and you can say, "Show me yes." And for me, it's smooth, and I'll say, "Show me no," and then it's kind of sticky. Then if someone is talking to me, I'll just be rubbing, depending on who they are, I'll just be rubbing my tongue on the roof of my mouth. Now, if you do this ahead of time, you say, "Show me yes," and rub your tongue on the roof of your mouth. And then say, "Show me no." My yes is smooth and my no is rough. So if I'm interviewing someone, or someone is interviewing me for a job, for example, I'll just keep rubbing my tongue on the roof of my mouth, and then if it goes rough, I'll write that down, what they were saying, and then I'll ask them to elaborate, because maybe they didn't tell me the complete answer to what this is about, or they were lying to me. And so there's plenty of ways that you can, just be sitting there, with your hands folded, and you can have your hands folded, you can be pushing on your thumb, pushing it down, "Show me yes," and then "Show me no." It'll just slide right off. And just subtle ways that you can be, or just being focused and paying attention to your body. Bless you. And if you're getting sick to your stomach when you're having a conversation with this person, do you really want to work with them? Do you really work for them? Are they just completely lying to you because they're desperate to get somebody into a position for a job? So yeah, there's a big wide world out there, and we need to be paying attention to it, and just doing what we can to make it better for everybody else. And I feel that, and I know that doing that through dowsing is trying to teach as many people as I can, and offering these conferences to as many people that understand and see the vision behind it all, how this is for their benefit.
So it's really a way of accessing your intuition, your higher guidance. Is that a fair statement?
It is, yeah.
Yeah, good.
Because I feel that we're just a giant filing cabinet, and that we know everything, and we just have to access it. We just have to know how to answer those questions. It's like, so you can sit here and say, "Is it going to rain?" Well, yeah, it's going to rain somewhere, but you want to be asking questions in the now, or asking questions in the past, and also you want to be minding your own business. Okay. So when Walt Woods was teaching people to dowse, and then there's the book Letter to Robin, "Can I dowse? May I dowse? And should I dowse?" I've had people call me up and say, "Should I move to Alaska in May to find a husband?" And it's like, what? And so if people have questions like that for me, I say, I'm going to do blind dowsing for you. I'll do 3, and then after that, I'm $500 an hour. Okay? Understood? Okay, good. So I'll say, you form your question in a yes or no format, and then I'll just tell me when you're ready, and I'll tell you yes or no, and then that's because it's none of my business what your question is, and I may judge it to the point where I'm not going to give you an accurate dowse, because I may think it's a stupid question. So, and I'm just being perfectly honest.
So with that question, there's 3. There's move to Alaska, there's May, there's find a husband. So you you would douse each part of it.
Whatever they wanted, whatever they were smart enough to, do. I mean, that was quite a number of years ago, and after that, I wasted a long time on the phone with that woman, and I just like, oh my God, never again.
So what was the outcome of your dowsing for her?
I have no idea. Because, people will ask, like they'll ask questions, and then they'll surmise an answer, and then they'll do this thing, and then it doesn't work out, and then they blame you. So that's why I don't want to know. I don't want to know what you want to do. It's none of my business. And successful dowsing is that I don't care what the answer is. I have no attachment to the answer. Whereas if I had an attachment, that's a whole different ball of wax. Because then that way somehow you can, some people will sit there and douse about, questions that are personal to them, and they'll keep asking questions in different ways to try and get the answer that they want.
That's cheating.
So it's like, what are you doing? Do you want the truth? Or do you just want what you think you want right now? You might think that, you want to date this person, and it turns out they're a wife beater. It's like, what are you doing? If you're not paying attention to your gut, that's a huge detriment to yourself and to your physical health, your mental health.
Great. I think that's it. Thank you.